Whenever I first became a pastor, I was in my 40s. I had been at a church, and people would come to me often and mention someone that they knew that was in the hospital, or maybe a relative that was in the hospital. I visited a lot of people at members' request that did not attend our church. And so this one time I was asked to go and visit someone. And so I went to the hospital, and they were there. They looked okay, to be in a hospital. And I just talked a little bit, chit-chatted, found out a little bit about them, but I didn't ask them any serious religious questions. I just felt like this was an opportunity for me to get to know them and for them to get to know me. I had a word of prayer with them, and then, I thought I'll come back later at another time, and then, I'll ask them some more serious questions about their spiritual condition. So a day or two later, I go back to the hospital, and the bed is made. And so I inquire, and they tell me that the person had died. Well, I realized that that was a missed opportunity. And maybe I was the person and the only person that would have had an opportunity to ask that person about their spiritual condition. I told myself I didn't want to make that error again. A few years later, pastoring at the church where I'm at now, someone came to me and told me that a friend of theirs had a terminal illness, and the person had 6 months to a year to live. But they said that the following day they were supposed to go to the hospital and have some minor thing done, but they wanted to know if I would go by and see the person before they had this minor procedure. And so I did. I went to the person's house, and as I sat there and talked to the person, I thought back those years earlier when I had failed to take the opportunity to be able to share the gospel with somebody that I didn't know, someone that I just met. And so after meeting with the person and talking for a while, I did that, and I explained to them what it meant to be a Christian. I asked them if they had ever asked God to forgive them of their sins, and this person said, "No, I never have." I said, "Well, would you like to do that?" And he said, yes, I really would. And so we prayed, and the person asked for forgiveness of their sins. Well, I told the person that, I said, "Now tomorrow, when you go to the hospital for this outpatient procedure, I'll plan on getting there." And I said, "What time are you supposed to be there?" He told me, and so I went home. The next day, I got to the hospital, I was there, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. I didn't have their telephone number, so eventually, after I'd been waiting an hour or so, I called the friend that had asked me to go and see them. And they told me that the person had died that very morning before ever getting to the hospital. You see, we just don't know when we might be the right person in the right place at just the right time when God needs us. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to be able to spend just a few moments with you today. I've been looking in Samuel, and we see where Saul is the current king. Saul has turned away from God. He's more interested in himself. No longer does he put God first in everything that he does. And because of that, Saul has become despondent. He's become depressed. He can't sleep. He's agitated all the time. I mean, the joy has gone out of Saul's life. The people around him recognize that. I can only imagine what the people that had to deal with him every day had to deal with when you got the king, the person that's in charge of everything, and you're tiptoeing around trying to not say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. Well, one of the attendants of Saul, King Saul, he said, there's a possibility that music might make you feel better. And so Saul said, well, do you know anybody that plays music? And the person said, well, as a matter of fact, and I'm kind of reading between the lines here, but I'm going to do that if that's all right. The person said, as a matter of fact, we've got 3 of our soldiers. And I was able to find out, maybe you went home with them or something on a break or whatever. But he said, they've got a young brother. And that young brother, he plays the harp. And he just does a great job. I'm thinking that if we were to get him to come here and play the harp for you, I'm thinking it would make you feel better. Well, King Saul, he said, well, let's give it a try. So he said, you go find that young man and you bring him here and let's see if it works. And so that's what they did. They went to Jesse's house and said, we understand that you have a young son by the name of David, and we would like for him to come to see King Saul and for him to bring his harp with him. So David went, and I guess you could say he auditioned for the king, and he played his harp. And whenever the harp was being played, Saul was able to relax. And it seemed like I guess we would call it the demons within him would seem to just settle down and allow him to relax whenever he was listening to David play the harp. And the king enjoyed it so much, he made arrangements with Jesse. He said, I would like for David to come often and for it to be a regular routine so that he can come and play the harp for me. It's easy for us to say, well, wasn't that a coincidence? Wasn't that something that somebody would have recognized that David could play the harp and that the king needed someone to play the harp? And what a coincidence, all of those things coming together. But I've read enough in the Bible to realize that these coincidences are God-made. I've seen enough in my life to recognize the fact that things that I have no idea when they happen, why they happen that way, or that it is anything other than a coincidence. But as I go down the road and I look back, I can see how God placed things in my life. It is certainly my hope. This may sound terrible when I say this. It is my hope that the first gentleman that I went into the hospital to see, I'm hoping that that was something that occurred for God to prepare me for the other gentleman that I witnessed to. I really hope that I didn't miss an opportunity that person would have been able to have forgiveness of their sins. Maybe they were already a Christian, I don't know. I'm hoping that God set that up. I can't go back and change any of those things. But I've seen enough times in my life where God has pulled me into a situation, and then sometime later, these pieces would fall into place to allow me to be at the right place at the right time. It didn't just happen to David. It hasn't just happened to me. God can use every one of us. You see, there are people that you can witness to, people that you can be a witness for, that I would never be able to. You have a group of people that you'll come in contact with that I'll never come in contact with. And so I'm confident that God will put you in places that will allow you to do things that no one else could do. It might be telling your story. It's not whenever we witness, we don't have to necessarily pull the Bible out and find all the right scriptures. It's really about telling your story. This is what God has done for me. This is how God has blessed me. This is how I know that God has forgiven me of my sins. This is how I know that I have hope for tomorrow, because God has blessed me and given me assurance in my life. All of these things, they are your story. And that's what people need to hear. So when things come along in your life and you think, how in the world did I find myself in this place, in this situation, at this time? I think it's important for us to realize that God very well could have planned for you to be there. You know, when David showed up with his harp and started playing, he was probably nervous and wondering, why in the world would the king want me to come and play a harp? But it was so much more than that. And as that story goes on, we see how God put all of these pieces right in place. And He's doing that for you. And all He wants you to do is to be open and willing to do the things that come your way, be able to tell your story, and to be able to love God with all of who you are, and to be able to love others also. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May you truly be able to be God's light this week for those around you. Thanks for taking the time and viewing today.